Come on in, welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we'll be looking at the state of Survivor following Survivor 41 and Survivor 42. You know, there is such grace in the game of Survivor, it makes me want to cry. These two seasons of Survivor, and Survivor 41 in particular, were up there with the most anticipated seasons of Survivor ever, following the long layover necessitated by the pandemic. We went from 2 seasons a year to no seasons for 2 years, and for a while there, it genuinely seemed like Survivor might never come back thanks to COVID. Yes, it was after Boston Rob's elimination in Winners at War that the world officially rage quit and shut down. Survivor took that sabbatical to go back to the drawing board, taking a long, hard look at re-energizing the show. After all, how do you top an all-winner season? After much thought, they ultimately landed on focusing on fun above all else. As Jeff recalls it, he was explaining fire tokens, the Disney dollars-esque currency used in Survivor Winners at War, and presumably, at the time, future seasons, to Mike White, who replied, "Well, it sounds interesting, but is it fun?" Bitch. Those last 4 words came to define the creative direction of Survivor's new era. The very not fun fire tokens were scrapped, and a whole host of new twists and advantages were conceived in their place, each of them designed to be more fun and TV-friendly than Survivor dollary dues. So, was it fun? Is Jeff's idea of fun the same as ours? Considering that it seems like each 2-season cycle of Survivor will likely be roughly the same before the board is reset for the next cycle, I think it will be fun to take a look at each cycle as a whole after each pair of seasons. We'll look at the primary ingredients that go into the Survivor stew: the cast, the twists and advantages, and the storytelling and editing. We'll look at what's working and what's not, where Survivor goes from here, if the philosophy of fun is working, and most importantly, if Jeff will ever cut that quarantine hair. All that said, let's dig into the state of Survivor following Survivor 41 and Survivor 42. Let's start with what I consider the most important ingredient to a good season: the cast. You simply cannot have a good season of Survivor without a dynamic, interesting, and diverse group of players. Now, I've had very few complaints about Survivor casting for a long time. Survivor in its 30s has been almost uniformly great on the casting front. In fact, I'll say that outside of Survivor Ghost Island, every newbie or majority newbie cast in the 30s has been good to great. And I'm still convinced that the cast of Ghost Island was just a Big Brother cast that got on the wrong plane or something. We can't talk about Survivor casting in 41 and 42 without talking about the Survivor Diversity Initiative. Following season 40, a group of Black former players petitioned CBS to institute an initiative that future Survivor casts would be 50% people of color moving forward. Somewhat surprisingly, and to CBS's credit, they sat down with the organizers, listened to them, and actually instituted this rule for all their unscripted reality programming. It's impossible not to see this as a major win for the show. The more diverse cast ensured that the players were all on a more level playing field, and that traditionally underrepresented groups were represented and felt seen. And it's not only on the racial diversity front that this happened. There was increased diversity in age, religion, disability status, sexuality, and the show is better for it. Beyond that, I think the casts of both seasons are just straight up good, with 42 probably being a top 10 newbie cast in history. But both are dynamic groups of players with major enthusiasm for the game. Everyone came to play hard, except for the dude who got removed 5 seconds into the game in 42. 41 was undoubtedly a more self-serious group of people. I'm just speculating here, but it really felt like this group felt burdened by the high expectations of being the Survivor return cast. And it made for a more dour season overall, as I'm guessing many felt that they had to perform and deliver. It also didn't help things that a lot of the goofier and more inspired casting choices like Voce, Brad, JD, Sydney, Tiff, and Nasir all went out in the first half of the game. The vibe of the 41 cast is just so stone cold, especially down the stretch. Contrast that with the vibe of 42 throughout, which is much less serious and much more fun, with a borderline perfect boot order, except for Jenny, who we all agree was majorly robbed. I think the enthusiasm for the game from this cast in particular is unparalleled in Survivor history. Everyone is a huge fan, everyone came to play hard, and no one took things personally when they lost. Ultimately, I think both casts were pretty exciting groups of people to watch, and I think 41 was always going to have a more serious tone considering the expectations the cast must have felt. Casting for Survivor really has not been this consistently good, possibly ever, so no notes, Survivor. Moving on to twists and advantages, Survivor 41 and 42 introduced a plethora of new twists and advantages to somewhat mixed results. Let's start with the change to idols this season. Idols this season were like the classic tale of the bunny rabbit having dinner in the mailbox. No longer are they a relatively risk-free get. Now you have to unlock them, like some sort of Survivor DLC, by publicly saying a silly phrase. If you take an idol now marked with a large beware warning, you lose your vote until each tribe says their particular idol phrase at a challenge, with each phrase being sillier than the last. This is quite clearly where Survivor took their fun comes first mantra to heart. While it would basically be impossible to repeat this anytime soon, this was an enjoyable mix-up to acquiring idols that fixed exactly what people have been complaining about for like 20 seasons now. People finding idols repeatedly and just idling their way to the end. So I'm a little confused about where some of the hatred online for this came from. I mean, come on, it made for some of the most hype moments this show's seen in a long time.
Jeff, I am as confused as a goat on AstroTurf.
Combine these with the new Knowledge is Power advantage, which basically lets a player just yoink your idol right out of your hands, and it's clear that Survivor wants to nerf idols and has been listening to the anti-idol crowd. Another good new mechanic in my book is the shot in the dark, whereby a vulnerable player can give up their vote at Tribal for a 1 in 6 shot at safety. Although the mechanic of dropping a die in an urn then picking up a scroll is a little half-baked, I love the shot in the dark, clunky as it is, and it is clunky. I know Shot in the Dark doesn't have a ton of fans, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's gone next season and never spoken of again like the Medallion of Power. But I think this is a really good mechanic, and if it sticks around, it will earn its keep. It incentivizes blindsides, works as a Hail Mary, and there's tons of fun metagaming that could evolve over playing around it if only it gets the chance. Remember that idols were introduced in Season 11, and we didn't get a big, actual idol blindside as we know them until Season 14. Idols themselves evolved from novelty trinket to critical part of the game. I think they could massage the presentation a little bit. Not sure that dropping a die into an urn is the most exciting way to play this whole thing, but I promise if this sticks around, it will pay off big. Let's also talk about the return of Exile, whereby players are sent to a bizarrely unnamed island with a ship wheel on it that essentially serves as a Prisoner's Dilemma-themed advantage dispenser. In seasons past, they would have built entire themes around this location. On Exile, which saw players come to it roughly every other episode pre-merge, survivors from different tribes spend time on a get-to-know-ya hike before being asked to risk their vote, or not. Both players play it safe, nothing happens. One risks and one plays it safe. The player who risked their vote gets an advantage. Both risk, both lose their vote at the next tribal council. The ship wheel iconography is great, although, what do you think this is? Lost? I'm just gonna say, as a cautionary tale against watching Lost, at one point one of the characters literally drives the island out of time and space by turning a giant ship wheel. Sorry, I'll never pass up a chance to bash Lost. Anyway, back to Survivor. My philosophy on extraneous islands is my philosophy on being kidnapped. Avoid going to a second location. I'm not a huge fan of Exile Island in general. I think we kind of wrang everything we could out of it by season 18 or so. But this is a fun twist, and it's fine as it is. And scaling it back a little in 42 made it feel a lot less time-consuming. I think we already got the cross-tribal alliance they were hoping for out of this with Shan and Lyanna, so I wouldn't be surprised if Exile takes another 20-season slumber after this season. The next new mechanic of the game is perhaps the most controversial and convoluted: earning the merge via time travel by smashing an hourglass. I say this with warmth, Survivor. This is like a twist that would be suggested on Reddit, get like 3 upvotes and 7 comments, and then disappear in the sands of Reddit time. And because this is on Reddit, one of those comments would probably say something racist. In Survivor 41 and 42, instead of just merging, now you gotta earn your way into the merge with a challenge win. The idea of earning the merge and splitting the pool of potential merge votes in half is fine, I think. Too often lately, a majority of players just default to a safe vote for the first round at the merge, taking what should be one of the show's most exciting eliminations and turning it into one of its least. But the subsequent hourglass twist is just so convoluted, it boggles my mind how it came to be. To boil it down to the essentials: an exiled player who does not participate in the merge challenge is given a choice. Keep the challenge winners who earned their way into the merge as they are, and you plus the losers are vulnerable at the merge tribal council. Or smash the hourglass and turn back time, making the winners the losers and the losers the winners, and now you and the challenge losers are immune at the next vote. To point out the obvious, there's no planet where anyone would choose not being immune over being immune. In Survivor 41, Danny famously chewed out Jeff over this twist, arguing that he basically lied to the players when he took away their earned challenge win. I do think Survivor took this feedback to heart and tried to correct it in 42 by offering Applebee's. Oh, and also offering the winning tribe the ability to send someone to exile instead, and really underscoring that whoever went will get major power in the game. I think the Survivor fandom pretty universally agrees this didn't work. Although the adjustments in 42 were definitely a step in the right direction, it's still too much of a no-brainer though, and too much of a time sink. I admire the attempt at mixing up the merge, but after 2 seasons, the hourglass should respectfully turn back time and consider never being conceived. The last twist I want to touch on is Do or Die. This is another one that just isn't working for me. At the final 7, the players are given the option of sitting out the immunity challenge. If they compete and are first out of the endurance challenge, at Tribal Council they have to pick a box for a 1 in 3 shot of safety. While I think the twist is fair because the players are fully aware of the rules beforehand, it's just unnecessary drama so late in the game, and to me shows a reticence to trust the cast themselves to bring the excitement, when Survivor really hasn't been casting complacent people in a really long time. Both times the Do or Die appeared, it was the least exciting thing going on in the episode. Take the idol showdown this round in 42 between Drea, Mike, and Omer. It couldn't be more exciting, and yet the wind was a Monty Hall problem away from being completely taken out of the sails. If you gotta keep this, move this up to like the first round of the merge, and it's not as bad. But where it is now, it's just pointless drama way too close to the end of the game. To sum up the new twists and advantages, the theme that jumps out for me this cycle of Survivor is risk and reward. Beware advantages, do or dies, risk your vote, break an hourglass. Okay, not much risk there except for flying glass. Safety first, Erica, where are your safety goggles? The risk and reward theme makes sense. Jeff wants this to be a more dangerous era, and that doesn't just mean the stomachache that comes from eating this grilled cheese. I think any of these, the Hourglass, Do or Die, Shipwheel Island, would have worked individually as season-defining themes. All at once is a lot. I do think there's room for improvement by scaling things back and really moving forward with what works. Jeff, sometimes if you truly love something, you set it free. And you love the Hourglass. You love the Hourglass. Moving on to our final ingredient, storytelling and editing. I think this is a front on which Survivor largely succeeded. There were 2 new elements added to the storytelling package this year: the flashbacks to the players' personal lives, and the Jury Speaks segment making a surprising return in Survivor 42. These were both super great additions in my book. I know some people find the flashbacks to be a bit schmaltzy, and you're not wrong, but they're quick and easy character development that otherwise would have been delivered in a static confessional. In the context of 2 years of COVID, the flashbacks showing what the players have been through and overcome were not only welcome, but necessary, in my opinion. The Jury Speak segment in 42 was an even more surprising addition. Talk about a blast from the past, these disappeared in like Season 5. What's next, the Gong and Conch shell from Borneo? Well, I think this was a final last-ditch effort to fully explain Mike's loss to anyone who really hadn't been paying attention the last 7 or 8 episodes. I hope it sticks around. Hearing the jury's thoughts straight from their mouth on their final vote is always welcome. Another aspect I want to touch on here is the edit for the winners. It's clear we're in a new era. Erica and Marianne were both edited very unconventionally for a winner, and while I have a few gripes about Erica's story, I think this is an exciting direction for a show where sometimes the way the winner is presented is a little too telegraphed if you know what to look for. In hindsight, it's clear that Erica was intentionally hidden pre-merge, and that the Hourglass smash was supposed to be her big breakout moment. The moment she went from, say the line, Erica.
I'm going to come back into the game, still looking like a lamb, but ready to play like a lion.
Unfortunately, that came at a cost of not getting to see Erica's most important relationships really develop until the end, which kind of felt like we had to read between the lines a little too much. If Erica was hidden, Marianne was hidden in plain sight. Does Marianne have our first growth edit for a winner? This player's prize is growing in the game, coming into their own as a person, but falling short of making Final Tribal. Except Marianne didn't fall short. She won. Heading into the finale, I think many of us had it pegged as her game to lose, but up until the penultimate episode, her win was very obscured, despite her being one of the more visible characters of the season. I love that they showed her flaws and her struggling socially in the first half of the game. Too often, winners are sanitized and their flaws in the game completely edited out. I think these unconventional edits for winners are a super exciting direction for the show to head in, and it certainly beats hearing Teaching Time with Tommy 1,000 times per episode. As for everyone else, outside of poor Purple Heather, both casts were really fleshed out. By the end of the season, I felt like I knew everyone on the cast thanks to largely well-rounded edits in both seasons. Sure, there were heroes and villains that were the main characters, but even minor characters and early boots left mostly as fully realized individuals. And the worst episode in either season, the Brad boot, was hamstrung by an overabundance of advantages they had to show, only for them to all walk out the door with Brad on day 7. They even course-corrected on this, though. Omer left the game with an idle nullifier that we never even saw. If the advantage has minimal bearing on the game, just cut it out. I really don't want to complain too much, though. At the end of the day, these 2 seasons gave us 3 all-time great episodes in the JD, Jenny, and Drea boots. Just classic Survivor through and through. All in all, I'm very optimistic about the future of Survivor. 41 was good, and 42 was genuinely great. Possibly a top 10 season. In real time, in between seasons, they course-corrected errors they made in 41 for 42. And that is a super exciting thing to see. Bring on Survivor 43 and 44. Got nothing else for you. Don't smash the hourglass, smash the like button, and subscribe too, and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.